like
much,
my
but
metabolism.
I mean, I work here like 5 days a week, so I should, I mean, I,
Well, we-
yeah.
Would be like 15 years younger and.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's catching up. with
Yeah.
me.
All right, welcome back. Okay, I forgot to mention actually at the start of the meeting, the deputy mayor isn't here tonight. It was his son's grade 8 graduation. I understand that he's also valedictorian, so understandably, he wanted to be there for that, so. Steve, back over to you.
So on to the overall Parks and Recreation Master Plan, there's a slide summary there, and I'll go through fairly quickly. There will be a more detailed report that provides some of the summary consultation and a little bit more context around the various recommendations for each part of each type of facility. But this kind of gets highlights the main components of the overall master plan. And you can see on slide 2 there, for the next slide, Alice. The 4 components that we focus on are what we call, historically have been called the last master plan in 2009, community/sports parks, which is the Island Park / Regional Park, Gage Park. And then a number of existing smaller parkettes and neighborhood parks. So we're talking both about the renewal of these existing aging parks and some new neighborhood parks that will be needed in new subdivisions. There's an overall trails plan, both to existing trails, such as adding paved surfacing to key routes, and some missing connections that can be added to filling the gaps. And then the last part is a bit more maybe for facilities focused, but also just general direction on service delivery and programming, as well as the culture component. So this map beside you here is a bit of an updated version to the one that's shown on slide 3. This is the inventory of townwide parks and recreation facilities, as well as some open spaces that are operated by others, such as the schools, fairgrounds, and some of the corridors, the open space corridors. So you can see actually the system is quite well distributed geographically and quite well connected, at least in terms of the green colors. What's missing is some of the actual physical trail connections in some of these corridors. So that's a representative of what we would generally see in municipalities of your size, and what a common goal is in planning for parks is to try and link them together as much as possible. Not only so people can go from park to park, but also so you create kind of a complete open space network with opportunities to use the trail system more than just recreation to get to key places in the community. We have added the new parks to the inventory, though of course they're not developed yet. So these subdivisions, Island Village and Fieldgate are still in you should call it Fieldgate. Emerald Crossing are still in construction. They haven't been assumed by the municipality yet. So development of those parks will depend on the timing of completing the remaining work there. So on community and sports parks, so there's a picture of Greenwood Park there on slide 4. Then just jumping to number 5. We have previously developed a trails network for Greenwood Park, and we've reviewed that again with staff and further updated it. That also reflects the new connection that's being built to the splash pad along the edge of the parking area. So you'll see the dashed lines represent the existing trails that are granular surface right now, that we would recommend with the development of the new trails and completion of the park system through the park should be considered for hard surfacing. So in total, this whole trail network shown, which takes some time to implement, would allow almost up to 2 full kilometers of paved multi-use trail, which would be a significant connector of the facilities existing and new in the park, but also good accessibility and provide for fitness groups and and opportunities for more use of the park beyond sports field and playground. So we do see that as a relatively straightforward kind of quick win is to implement more of a complete trail system. Some of the key connecting points, we know 600 Main Street at the south end, part of that development, will include a multi-use trail along the Benzie Lane right on Main Street. So that would also include a pedestrian bridge across the Benzie Lane, and that would allow the trail system then to be linked right up in the Green Park. We see that we've numbered them intentionally based on kind of the time when we think they could be implemented. So as that development moves forward and those connections are made, it would make sense then to have people who can enter the park from Main Street or go down to Main Street from within the park, to have a paved surface up into the parking area. And then number 6, perhaps as another longer term route around the edges of the soccer fields and up to the Kansas Street area with those connections. The other connections I think are pretty self-evident. This is what their intent would be. We do know that we've had calls from residents of the Greenbrook subdivision that there are kids walking over to Glenbrook School and CRC area, roughly along the line of trail number 7 and 5. So it'd be good to formalize that connection to the park. Because it's kind of a desire line for students to walk over that way. Maybe before I move on to the next, any comments or questions on the trails plan?
So the trails will be consistent with, and there'll be a two-way trail.
That's what we recommend is that, it could be smaller, shorter walkways and things beyond this, but these would be, minimum 2 meters wide to support two-way use, cycling and walking, strollers, wheelchairs, everything. Graded so that they're accessible slopes and could, they don't all have to be maintained in the winter, but would have the capability to be maintained in the winter.
Very limited trails in the Lakeview subdivision. Any plans for any more than what's currently there? There's only the one basically on Swansboro Way leading into the park. There's nothing really at the north end of the subdivision, and there's a lot of, seems like green space between point 5 and 14 on my map. Any chance of putting something within that area, or is it because of the storm water pond?
So the main trail in Greenbrook is the one that runs on Greenwood, all the way up to north of the pumping station there. Yeah.
I'm looking at, I guess, the main map.
Which page are you on,
Here,
Walter?
So here's the park from here. And this dash line here is the existing trail that runs from north of
Yeah.
Park Lane all the way down to the park entrance of the north side.
I'm looking a little further north at the north end of, in that area there. Is there any chance of using the streets to make connecting trails up in that area?
Definitely, like all of these streets have sidewalk on at least one side, and the idea is that the sidewalk network feeds into the trail system. So we didn't draw, all the streets on this plan that have sidewalks connecting to the trail system. But on Warden Drive, there's a sidewalk that comes into the parkette and that connects to the trail. So the idea is to try and get all the people from up in the subdivision down to Greenwood Park and balance in the trail system, in a convenient way. Right now, they can certainly access it on the west side of the subdivision. What these connectors would do is allow access from the northeast side of the subdivision.
Right now, they're all walking down Fiddleton Lane. That's where I see the majority walking, when they walk, especially in the early hours of the morning, and they're not the school kids, they are the adults that are walking.
Yeah.
And so they're utilizing Little Park Lane and walking that way, and not so much within their area of their own, subdivision is what I'm trying to get at. For some strange reason, they're all utilizing that area there. So I'm wondering if the black, connecting and trails up in their area, that they're utilizing the little park more than Drive.
That could be, yeah, because with this north-south link, it really doesn't, it goes into the park and it ends at the street at the top. And so the fact that it doesn't go anywhere might be why when people like to walk in loops, I find, instead of going back to St. Louis Cave, they could be walking this way because it's the only street that goes all the way to Town Street, in the west, yes. But it also goes to the CBRC. It could be taking the Fairgrounds Trail down and back a different route. But what this would provide is lots of walking options in various distances within the park itself. I think as a general preference, people prefer to park not on the road or to walk not alongside the road. And if it's a paved surface with different loops, I think that would take a lot of that kind of recreational walking off of some of the busy roads to the sidewalks. That would be definitely.
And I just might not be the possible things to do. The trail that goes along the pumping station, where the pumping station is there any way that that could be at the ridge of the berm? We have, I'm just trying to think of how we can resolve their issue for the long term, the residents' issue with regard to the optics of the pumping station.
I don't believe there's enough space there.
Oh, the one that was.
Yeah, like it's
There's not enough space to make a berm.
Walter Creek Park,
the pump station.
right, which is great. So we have shown, the existing, granular trail and what's told you now, but in its current location and the possibility of being extended all the way down the rail trail through there, would require a bit more investigation of those forested areas through there, but, this is identified with the dash green is to identify that could be, added as a full, it's a future, shown as a future secondary trail. So, there's a section from Cedar Street over to, there's a little walkway out in, the subdivision there. And I think we'd have to take a closer look at the route options there. It sounds like it can't go around the north side of the pump station because of the creek. But 15 feet is generally wide enough to have a trail over. Even if there's fences on either side, it's just going to have trail and trees and visual screening and all of that. But that is a relatively short section where we have both, once you get past the pump station, but the well there, it would go further away from the back. And
I was thinking if this is on the top, like if the actual trails on top of some sort of a ridge or berm, kind of sort of obscure the.
Oh,
I can see it in the backyard.
that's something we got. Yeah, I don't really know the detailed investigation of any of these trailers, but. Any other comments or questions on that?
I think Denise just wanted to add something.
Oh, sorry. Thanks very much. Because Steve mentioned the crossing and the cut throughs that the students use. So part and parcel of what we would assume, and in addition to the cost estimate is in the one column, there is operating implications. So certainly if we want to create hard surfaces, which is year-round accessibility, with that comes the expectation that we would maintain that year-round. So similar to sidewalks, the track list would then be assigned operationally with the applicable equipment and staff to ensure that we had a network that was provided throughout the winter and created literally safe passage. It may not be applicable, say, for bike riding all the time, but at least for pedestrian traffic, it would be something that we would add to our service scope and certainly then provide the community with walkability year round.
Yeah, so there is another section of this that deals with the town trail system. For now, I just wanted to focus on the Greenwood Park trails. So as we move through, you'll see that the remaining slides on Greenwood Park add, facilities that are existing or new recommended facilities that kind of complement that trail layout. So you're again connecting different facilities in the park. alongside the trail improvements or, at some point shortly thereafter. We would recommend that there should be some parking and landscape enhancements, certainly as you add the trail system kind of being aligned with the parking areas and the blocks of trailheads. Kind of staff already, I think, obtained a quote to pay the existing parking areas in the west side of the park. It's been easy after the volunteers capital forecast for quite some time now to create a new parking lot on the north end of the street. We estimate you could accommodate between 40 and 60 parking spaces in that area with the parking lot shown in the rough size that we've identified. There are homes on either side of that space, and we would recommend there be some tree planting and screening on either end of the parking lot as well. There's an acoustic berm off the end of Henry Street. And the reason for that is the property to the south of that is zoned and designated conductor in the official plan of zoning bylaw. So we don't know what's going to go there in the future. It's not an industry right now, but the acoustic berm has to remain to protect for that. But it is a bit, some residents have commented that it's, overgrown and it was always intended to naturalize, but I think some additional tree plantings would be an improvement there. And then at the bottom end of the park, number 13, off of the wastewater treatment plant driveway area there, along Besley Creek, there's kind of an unused open space. This isn't a high priority item. I would say some of these items are kind of nice to have or future ideas, but not fully costed or considered as recommendations in the short term. So we could create additional parking there. We've shown an example of permeable parking for a trailhead application. Could create additional community gardens. Basically, an access space that's available that could be used for a variety of different things when that's needed. As the trail system becomes more used and more sophisticated, parking, ideally some washrooms and signage to help people navigate the trail system.
But there's nothing connecting Industrial Road right now, where you're talking about provided area, for example, at Trailhead at 13, parking area, whatever you want to do in the future. There's nothing connecting. There's no trail going right to industrial, because I know a lot of people use the park currently to cross over to go to commercial when they're walking.
Yeah, so then they could get on the new trail that will be along the Besley Drain going down to the 7th Main Street. So they could either, from that area, they could go north of the park, or they could go 7th down the Main Street. So connect both. The one that goes south, then you can get on the balance of the trail network. Across the road is the Simon Creek trail area.
Subdivision fees that at some point in time for that trail.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's part of their subdivision requirements.
The bridge. Well, right now, I don't see much of anything happening.
It's coming.
I keep hearing you say that. It's coming, so it's for.
Walter, when's your birthday? Make sure it's a birthday present.
The next slide is number 7. So we presented a couple of different options on a facility, and we recommended that it should really be configured as a multi-sport opportunity, so that the use of that space with full potential isn't contingent on just one sport. And I think that's a fair and pretty common approach, that you don't have facilities that are dedicated to single use. Unless that single use is going to occupy the full scheduling capability of that surface. There's lots of examples out there that we looked at where soccer and cricket and even other field sports are combined in the same surface. So we looked at those examples and how there's been elsewhere to come up with this conceptual layout. Couple of thoughts on why you would want to look at the Greenwood Park extension area for cricket. If you look at the KTH Park location, you've got 2 existing sports fields, and where they come together, there's a pretty significant grade change. and a drain swale around the edge of the outfield of the ball lemon. Secondly is, I was there today, actually the soccer field is in quite good shape, even though it's not used for soccer very much. It's there for capacity in the future. It is a bit undersized relative to the senior usage, but as the opportunity for the junior level play. Ball diamond as well. There was a ball diamond at one time in Greenwood Park that was lost. And there was an added diamond park, which was kind of where we did on your historical service level on ball diamonds. If you were to remove KTA, I think you eventually have to look at adding one back. So then you'd be looking at adding a ball diamond. And then the last point is just that there is an irrigation system already in Greenwood Park, including the pump building and pipes for the two top fields. And when you look at a cricket facility and based on grass that they want, you really do need to irrigate it to make it work. And we thought it would be more cost effective to add that in Greenwood Park and adding a whole irrigation system down at Cape Station.
Steve, can you just add what we expect to happen at school? With the ball diamond, with one being removed and the second most likely coming out of.
Yeah, so at Highland Park, most school boards are getting rid of, supplying baseball diamonds, even normal ones on their school grounds. They don't generally use them in even gym class or anything anymore. And thought that there's been too much liability issue with baseball, unfortunately, on school grounds. So Upper Grand specifically mentioned that in the past, that was their intent to remove ball from their properties. Don't know exactly the timing of that. But that would mean, any ball that currently groups that are on ice site. You can't count on those being available long.
To check, so the one, well, F and E, let's say DE. So one was removed from permanent use last year, and this year, because of project, we are not using the second one. As Steve mentioned, we have an expectation that as boards rationalize their own property, that may not be available going forward. A part of the analysis that the KTH Greenwood could do was that, if we lost the diamond at KTH because of a permanent single purpose facility there, the likelihood is that we would have to reinstate that at Greenwood potentially. Those costs are not insignificant. So this is why strategically, when you balance the cost of the redevelopment potentially, expecting that irrigation would be a base requirement for the level of maintenance and the field type that's being requested, that centralization of like-minded sport in a facility that has a new splash pad, has other active sport, has multiple sports using rentals, it made a hub for that kind of use. As opposed to diversifying it and putting it in different locations to have to manage that independently.
Counselor Sample?
My question is, when you talk multi-use field between soccer and cricket. Cricket isn't played in the whole field, it's just played in a certain area of the field.
Yeah.
So are we changing the way the ground's being put in so that wear points don't happen, or? Because you said you've seen it in other municipalities.
Yeah, so I should clarify what it means. They're never used at the same time.
Well, I understand they won't
Yeah.
use at the same time, but if you look at what's out at KTH Park now, where they play in the center field,
Yeah,
that's worn
right.
and it's becoming this.
Yeah, so what we've done, there's a darker green rectangle, I'm not sure if you can see it.
Yeah.
Right under the number 14.
Yes.
So the normal configuration that would be a multi-use cricket and soccer is you put those the wear and tear area of the cricket pitch between the fields,
Okay.
not in the playing surface.
Okay.
And you organize the soccer nets so they're in the less used part of the cricket pitch, so that the cricket players aren't fumbling across the worn wall areas of the soccer pitch. So that, yeah, this layout is intended. In the soccer field, they're staggered in part because of the shape of the area, but also to try and stagger the wear and tear. And ideally, the soccer field design can move the nets, back and forth into the season to minimize the wear and tear in one spot. These fields that are shown in the dashed rectangles are about 95 to 100 meters long and 55 meters wide. So a little bit on the smaller side for full senior field use, but could accommodate across to junior and elite.
Absolutely.
So without a lot of capacity in a relatively flat area.
Sorry.
Not to put you on the spot, Steve, but, and if you can't think of any tonight, maybe you could just send them to us, but at other locations where soccer and cricket do coexist, just so maybe we could take a look and get a sense of how that works.
Yeah, just what did one, Kitchener, has, I think, recently opened theirs in the Southwest Park. I'm glad you asked that because, what's important to point out is that your community of about 9,000 people, and those communities of 200,000 people are just opening their first cricket game. So, that gives you a sense of the supply level of the population. I'm not saying cricket is not a need here, I'm just saying, if you're gonna do it, you wanna make it as flexible for you as possible, because you're gonna want to be able to quality as many users for that investment.
I just want to interject too. The other thing that we looked at is we understood from some of the utilization data that we have for certain sport, namely soccer, that it is in a growth mode. And that there's potential expansion need for space because this is adding to the inventory under a shared use model. But certainly recognizes that, it's not always, if the volume of bookings based on our existing scheduling demonstrated that exclusivity was a requirement, then probably would have identified that, but we don't have that evidence today. The numbers that we have are more reflective of sports potentially in growth. And so a shared use model would accommodate what we see is an upward trend in utilization in soccer.
Yeah.
But obviously not playing, just to clarify, that cricket would not be played on Thunder.
No.
No.
The other thing that definitely some benefits, but scheduling gets more complicated. Clearly, everybody increasingly wants prime time hours to play their sport on the field, and some of like ice at the rink. Hard to accommodate everybody for the preferred time. But allocation policy definitely would be to the multi-use. Over to the next slide. So we're just going to look at an meeting. Meeting that fact, no longer that. That was kind of needed facility, sort of like Aqua, Greenbrook subdivision when that was built. I think it did have a few years of use and this become overgrown. So we're recommending that more of a full size outdoor ice rink / basketball multi-use court. You can play surface that you play ball hockey. Do it with or without boards, fencing, lighting. Obviously, you can add lots of supporting amenities to that, but if you're going to do something like that, that would be the spot. Put it in.
Underneath it, for refrigeration.
You haven't included that in the capital cost estimate, so that has to be another, cost add-on. But I think what you want to do is kind of pilot the use of that through a ski trail at Phillip Park, for example, or vice versa, pilot on one of the ice cream first. And then if you're happy with this operation and have a sense of how to maintain it and that kind of thing, then look at the additional applications for it. But even without the winter component, again, we identified through this process that there is quite a bit of demand for basketball and other multi-use sports, and not a lot of facilities.
The question I had, currently there we have the basketball court full use plus the other skateboard park that's there as well, which is also being very well used.
Yeah.
So if we're moving the basketball court, are we leaving that one there, moving another one over, and creating a new one?
I think if you could relocate that, yeah. You could use it.
That's a relocation.
Yeah, And
What do you- what are we gonna do with the-
Add for other sports, like we can use it for, other non-use sports, racket sports, additional skate park area. Yeah.
Additional skate park, yeah, make it bigger.
So we're taking out the one basketball court is what you're basically saying.
Yeah, I think we want to consolidate the new pad. And that new pad would be large enough to have like 2 full courts side by side. Wow.
The only question I have with that is the fact that it's so heavily used because of the area that it's in and the amount of population it supports within that area. Why not keep both there?
I mean, you can leave it there and then see how the new, if anyone's still using it. Like, everyone's gonna go to the new courts, right, and play on those, and the other ones will be used basketball. I mean, there's no harm leaving a net there. But you could allow other uses of it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? If you needed to expand the skate park, for example, or have additional general court space, that would be where you want.
I guess the reason I'm saying that is because right now, big guys use the basketball court, little guys don't get to use nothing. It's just basically taking
More
the
of
night
a
off.
court.
More court you have there, you have the opportunity for the little ones to use one, and it can be exclusive for their use. Bigger guys to use another.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. The other components include, like right now, there's play structures in multiple play areas. More of a consolidated play area. Would make some sense as you need to replace play structures, you wouldn't do it, before you need to. Based on the age of the facilities. That it'd be interesting, they immediately need to replace the play structures in Green Park. But eventually they will need that. And that would be an opportunity then to create an accessible, play space area. Doesn't necessarily have to have, say, the rubberized surfacing or something like that, but could have accessible play components in it and a pathway, a big pathway to the playground. And Denise mentioned regarding lighting of certain sections of the trails, we definitely recommend that sodium dark sky, energy efficient lighting considered in Green Park. Is currently there. So that was Green. Trails.
You're gonna have any UA accessible trail in Greenwood Park on the parking area to some of the facility.
All of them. All of them. As long as the grading permits, all of those would have to be ADA compliant. Which is really a surface and slope. Okay, on to Highland Park. Not as many recommendations on this one. It's like it's baseball. Sport park. It does lack a bit of internal connectivity, so smaller land area than Greenwood Park, not as many trails needed, but still when you add it up, if you were to add, two trails. North-south between the parking area at the north end of the school property and east-west to connect Gordon Street with the rail trail. That would be 450 meters total of trail area. And then internally as well, having some barrier-free or accessible pathways to the play equipment and the pavilion. With compliance. We've shown at the bottom an example of a team playground with the play equipment at Park is 28 and it's all with the park. So we recommend a consolidated play structure there. Team play equipment is one of the trends that we observed in the background research and since this is near the rail trail, it might make sense to look at a real team. Any questions or comments on Highland?
When we have here anything to do with the Highland Park, it's mostly baseball and stuff like that, are we looking at bleachers and dugouts and stuff as upgrading? Any of that stuff in any of this work?
We didn't hear anything to that effect, so we didn't put it in, but. You know, actually, what we heard from the ball primarily was just more operational, where they're, higher expectations of preparedness of the field. Sure. As opposed to wanting, more seating and dugouts and. So the facility, I think, from there, it's just. When they go to play, that it's all lined and ready for the games.
That's no holes,
Have some mixed
Same.
emotion on that one.
just say.
So for the sake of identifying that there is two options for cricket / multi-use soccer sports field for KTH Park on slide 12, we've shown the same size of cricket pitch. And it looks like an oval is supposed to be, cricket pitches are actually oval, they're longer on one dimension than the other. In this case, you would have to, because of the rectangular shape of KTH Park, you would have to orient it with the long side of the oval swept. And have the wickets oriented that way as well, so a bit more space between the soccer fields. Obviously, it doesn't work so well with the big baseball as well. Alongside that, I think eventually you're gonna have to look at replacing washrooms at KTH Park if this was the chosen site for a new cricket pitch multi-use field. You want to maybe look at that earlier than you would otherwise. Similarly for a shade type of structure, which could be separate from the washroom building or built into it. Pictures, just an example there, one that has both built into the trails, connecting from the end of the trail on the southwest end of the park across the school parking to 350 meters. And that also includes connecting north south up to the sidewalk on Homestead Drive. Any questions about KTH? So, the general theme on the neighborhood parks is that the first one with either particular Street Park that's been applied for as early as this year. Right now, some of that vehicle has some damage to it. Some of it is still in use or not being not unsafe or anything like that. It's just again, it's not pieces of equipment in different purpose areas without any AODA pathway. So we save on the cost of a pathway to the equipment. It's better to consolidate it in one surface area. For Simon Street Park, which is very close to Simon Fort Parkette as well. We just identified that play equipment's in pretty good shape. There is again a pathway that should be provided right to the play area. The parking area could be made slightly larger, but again, you want to do that if you saw increasing demand for parking there. And that probably relates more to the trail options there than it does the use of park. And this would be another site where there is enough room at a basketball showing that in setting. It would have to be a smaller facility though. There's not that much space. And then at Summerhill Park, the original plan did look at the possibility of a basketball court. We heard from quite a few residents of the Summerhill area that would be the one thing that they really like to see closer to home, because there's a lot of kids in that age that would enjoy it. The challenge with number 8 is there's some regrading and topsoil removal that would be required to flatten the area for a basketball court. just to kind of sum that up, that is also about creating geographic distribution throughout the county. We're mindful of where there's always importance and facilities available at schools and so forth, and walking distance and demographics to be there. For Jack Downing Park that recently updated and no facility recommendations there other than continuing to incorporate public art and programming opportunities. Greenwood Crescent is a small, lot size park. It looks like it's in reasonably good condition and just missing the area pathway. Morden Drive again, reasonably good condition. It's not that old. It is missing some seating and bike racks and could have been okay. And then Simon Court is the oldest in this group. When I was by the park today, it was pretty good use actually, a number of kids there. But the play equipment, there's multiple spots for it. The thought there is it's so close to Simon Street Park. It's redundant in terms of having play equipment there, and there's no graphics of that part of town that is older. So maybe more of a passive park might make more sense. And there is a half-court basketball that's in pretty rough shape as well, which is why we recommend putting in the street park for the parking instead of that the smaller park. Great connections that could be formalized later as well. I'm on slide 17. Anyway, before I jump into the new parks, any questions or comments on what we've covered for the existing parks? Okay. Okay. So, right now the Highland Village Park Walk is used for upswell storage, and actually that is more or less been leveled out. They do have to put some topsoil and seed down and put the pathways in and plant some trees. As part of the landscape package for the subdivision, we required developers to provide a facility plan, which is basically just to show what components could fit in this park. The facilities that are shown here are actually more of a community level park oriented in that they're not necessarily something you would find in a good park. So we put in a cost estimate that includes everything except for 9 and 10, the spray feature and community garden. Putting a flat back and community garden little park. This may not be the location to add more of those types of things. But the rest of it in some sense, again, another multi-sport play equipment, some shelter, pathway, trees. And it does have to walk and build it. So this is of the new parks, this one should go first. Obviously, those residents have been at home for a while now. And this will also serve additional development that will happen on the west side when servicing is available. So this one that I would suggest to be considered in the next 2 years. And then for Ant Park, which was the name identified some time ago for the park block at Emerald Crossing. They're a little bit further out from being at a stage where they can level and see that block. It does have the same pumping station and washroom building as the Highland Village Park. But in the range of facilities proposed is very similar with a bit different layout. I think this is a great opportunity for not only a neighborhood park in Emerald Crossing for the residents there as they can visit, but also it should be a place where we might expect people who are using the commercial area to visit as well. And so it's got lots of room for gathering, so outdoor seating space, play equipment, multiple sports, lots of room for people to go and enjoy the outdoors. Timing for that, though, I would suggest it more in the 4-year range, because of the remaining development work required to be completed in this division there. For so I won't go through each existing location, starting on slide 20. Start to see, some of the existing linkages, the one behind the homes on Greenwood Ave that I talked about, where those are limestone trails or some other granular surface, Simon Street as well. And those really are key connecting routes that should be considered for hard surfacing. In the new trails, a couple of key connections that we've identified. At the south end of Island Village, there's a walkway block that's shown on slide 22. Just out of the stormwater, and there's an opportunity potentially to connect via a trail easement with Stella Joe over to Victoria Street, which then people could get on Franklin Street, and from Franklin Street access the trail over to Simon Street Park and KTH Park, and eventually all the way over to Fiddle Park. So this is really the south loop and completing that for the new subdivision area on the west side. And where we talked about the opportunity to connect from KTH Park with the Fiddle Park in the top part of that side. The overall trails plan, which is also on the page here, shows how all these routes can be connected. Of course, some components do rely on the Long Street connection, so we made sure those are streets that have sidewalks on one or both sides. Like maybe, and there's a combination of new trails with full paved surface and existing trails to be resurfaced. And then there's a secondary network that really is more about recreational usage, and that would not need to be paved. We've shown some potential alternative locations for trailhead. Again, these are areas where people can get on the overall trail network and walk or bike or whatever else, and try to pick locations where there will eventually be a washing facility. Some of this does depend on what the county ultimately does with their main spinal route in town and the regional connection that will provide. But the ideal of that route was created as a multi-use regional trail facility, but the county is still working on the transportation master plan to kind of set the course for that trail.
Steve,
The balance
Sorry.
between the motorized and non-motorized.
I know it's late and you're probably not super excited anymore, but when you look at this map, this is going to fulfill a vision of no part of our community not being connected. And to Councillor Bonato's point about sidewalks, if you then incorporate the breadth of sidewalk linkages that we have, you can literally now, if you're able-bodied and it's even whatever, get from one point of our community to the other unimpeded. And that is rare in a community and something to be like super excited about. Because what this means is that in terms of marketability for the community and what we are delivering to you in terms of quality of life and some of the stuff that came out of the CIP and the engagement from health, this would fulfill that opportunity. And in terms of livability, it should make the community even more desirable as a place to live. So just, not that the whole plan's not exciting, but this is phenomenal opportunity in terms of where we could go.
Just while we're stopped for a second too, we just need a motion to sit past 9:30. Councillor Bonato, seconded by Councillor Sample, all in favor? All right.
Did you do fine?
No.
Yeah, she did.
I didn't see it.
Oh, we gotta go smart. So the other aspect of the trail network is, that is pretty universal. Some of the recommendations of the plan are really going to interest certain parts of the community more than others. Certainly, I think the sport field fall in that category. Virtually everybody walks for recreation. Whether it's walking your dog or you're just kids out or I think that needs to point, creating something that all the community can get behind. That's relatively cost effective compared to some bigger ticket items. The trail should be a significant focus. The rest of the presentation really goes to more of the indoor facility and programming, and delivery elements. Obviously, the big item that we haven't talked about yet is centered up the recreation complex, CDRC. We know that's going to be looked at in terms of governance as well through separate process, in terms of service delivery planning and review. But we partnered with another firm that specializes more in this aspect, McQueen Galloway Associates, which is a successor of Galloway, Galloway firm, Steve Galloway, who helped with the original 2009 master plan. And they really focus on the consultation with groups who use the Center of Recreation Complex. So they've come up with some recommendations, which are summarized in slide 26 there. And it's a bit of a, it builds on the previous slide, which talks about facility condition assessment. So notwithstanding that there is a board governance model for the CRC, it is a town facility. So there is recommendation to that the town should really, as the owner of that asset, should be undertaking a fairly extensive condition assessment of the facility. Basically, you have to come to some decisions as to what the future of it is, given its age, and that it's going to need some significant capital maintenance in the years to come. So with that in mind, the key recommendation is to do that assessment and really to follow on that with some decisions and further reviews based on the result of that assessment. But that would give you some insight into when you think about management, how it would be improved in the future, potential expansions, potentially reverting some of the uses of some of the spaces. But in the meantime, under its current governance model, we recommend that the town continue to work towards getting as much use of that facility as possible, working with that board, and potentially as a direct program of the facility. And that would be in the form of kind of bookings time and space in that facility, and having a coordinator to organize groups to use the space. So there's really two prongs to that. Is looking at the hard asset and looking at its longevity and life cycle costs. And then there's programming dimension, which is you need the resources to be able to make sure that that space is being utilized to its full potential. So connecting groups, connecting volunteers, connecting program providers to the space, and helping them with the organizational side of things, even things like being a resource on what do they need to do for insurance, how do they advertise and market their programs, all of those things. So that's a bit of a segue into the final section into the recommendations, which is on programming. And we recommend here to initiate the creation of a community services department. The Tracy McQueen and Jennifer Reynolds and Terry Holloman, those are the consultants on the NGA side. They have a lot of experience in that regard. They all used to lead at a director level municipal recreation departments, or were extensively involved throughout their career in that capacity. And so they put these points together in terms of some ideas and recommendations to think about in establishing a position within the town staff resources as a dedicated person to initiate a community services department. Basically, someone who would ensure your parks and facilities are programmed to their full potential, and special events are looked after, and that it's a year-round viewpoint on that. To also further develop recreation-related communications and engagement with the community and users, and even looking at things like signage and digital implementation of that building community awareness. That is identified here, but with the recognition that the town is not the only service provider. So the other function would be to continue to work with the school boards, ensure there's opportunities for community So schools would have to be aware of that that's measured, and you can see over time, you know, how much of the school gymnasium space, for example, is being used for community work and other programs, arts and culture, all of those things. The bottom point there, you know, skipped a few things, but it is just really to make sure there's a robust review of your user fees. So we heard quite a bit from some of the participants at the open house that we had about concerns around user fees. I think, you know, that needs to be taken in the broader perspective. Because the move in user fees is moved more towards asset management and break even. And yet, the pressure in small communities in particular is to make them less and less costly. So as we know, it's only going to cost more to own and operate these facilities. And what component of that can be addressed through user fees going forward. So, maybe before I wrap up with the recommendations summary tables, and on that part, the and facilities and programming management. Okay, well, we put some high level process in all of the recommendations that were identified. Most of the operating considerations don't have a cost element to them, except for we put a preliminary estimate there on what it might cost on an annual basis to start with a recreation program or a coordinator. But the rest are capital in terms of the estimates. So obviously the biggest is around Greenwood Park. A lot of recommendations there. It's a big piece of land and there's a big expansion area that won't be developed for anything yet. We're going to have to meet on that. The other two community parks are much smaller in terms of their recommendations. If PTH Park was chosen as a preferred option for the multiple sports field, then you're looking at more of a comparable to the Greenwood Park expansion cost. And still with an empty field at Greenwood Park. So we haven't duplicated that in. Either Village Park and Emerald Crossing, Gant Park, those two combined are going to cost quite a bit. There's big land areas there, but one at Emerald Crossing is a bit bigger, which is why that cost is higher. And it's further into the future as well. Trails, and we keep the trails in large scheme of things, you can accomplish a lot with less of a capital intensive investment. The overall trail plan is $1,050,000 there. That would align with all of the trails on the plan that aren't already addressed in the line items above. And that is the number that's already insurance capital. So we haven't come up with a new number for that, we're just carrying that forward. Similarly for the two new parks, we're carrying forward the amounts that were specified in the UBC program. But we have adjusted them for those numbers are a few years old now, so we've adjusted them for that. And then as we get to the last slide there, it tells that the amounts on facility condition assessment are there. The operating considerations for the community services staff person. And then we added in the Phil Park. So again, keeping in mind that's at least a 10-year, capital plan to do all of that.
So the facility conditioning assessment for the CDRC, because it is a town owned, that it's expected to be a town carried out project, nothing to do with the board at all.
I mean, with any investment in that facility, whether it's a study or maintenance or capital, you'd want to look to your municipal partners to help support that. The number we had put in there was also intended to capture looking at the condition assessment of your other facilities, park buildings, any structures you have out there, curling club. you have some assets that you own, that may be, programmed and run by others, but, in order to determine how much you have to spend in the next 10, 15, 20 years to keep those facilities going, you really need somebody, engineer, architect to do a detailed assessment.
Fortunately, the curving club is 99-year lease instead of our hands, so I'm not really worried about the curving club. That'll be their problem for 99 years. It's not ours. I'm more worried about the CDRC and some of our other facilities that currently are running with buyouts, so municipal partners that buy
Yeah,
so many.
that is a fairly standard practice for municipalities to undertake those condition assessments from time to time and really to inform the asset management planning around those built pieces of your parks and recreation infrastructure.
So I know that you're not really looking for any action from council tonight, but feedback is obviously appreciated. And I think in fairness to council, I mean, you know, there's months and months of work here. And you know, we've had, you know, since Thursday
Years.
to sort of take a look at it and then take a deep dive tonight. So what I would suggest is that maybe we put this on the agenda for our next meeting as well, to have some additional discussion, just to give us a few more days to kind of, you know, ruminate on this and consider what we've talked about tonight. And, you know, also keeping in mind that it's 9:45. I just think that if we have another chance after taking a bit more time with this, we might have some more input to offer than we do right now.
So Steve, just for the recording and it's public, can you just confirm the combined cost between the Fiddle Park plan and these plans so that that cumulative cost is stated?
He's like, thanks.
He left that slide at the office.
No, it's important.
No,
So, yeah, so the total cost, overall Parks and Recreation master plans to town what is covered, so 8 million. The park plan with phases 9.5 million, total 70 million. Over many years, but it is a big and bold plan, and we captured a lot in it. One of these things to do with the municipalities, we did compare, for example, with Farmville. Three times the population, and their plan is 54. So, you know, very similar in terms of per capita expenditure over the next 10 years is envisioned. And you gotta think big. If you can't get it all done, that would be fairly consistent with what the experience has been in other municipalities, but if you can get most of it done, that would be significant improvement for your residents. So all of this is gonna take time to fully flesh out and, you know, again, I think in the near term, it's really focusing on those quick wins that can create the most community benefit for the least cost.
any initial thoughts right now? Beyond what we've talked about?
I think the trail system, I'm sorry. I think the trail system would be a relative cost effective, short-term win. From what's been presented this evening.
Councillor Sample?
So Parks and Recs meeting meets the third Wednesday of the month. So I would like that this plan get to them and they can review it and come back and possibly look at what might come out of that side of a meeting as a recommendation of what should be tackled or looked at as a group, right? Opportunity, right?
So that's my concern with it going back at the next meeting is the fact that.
That's why I'm saying, don't bring it back at the next.
No, and to be clear, my point is that we're not making final decisions at the next meeting, but I think the expectation tonight was that Steve would go through his presentation, we would provide some feedback, and I'm just saying in fairness to us, it's 10, you know, almost 10 o'clock at night, we've only had it since Thursday. So I think all of those things can happen concurrently, like Parks and Rec Committee needs to chime in, we can provide some further discussion. Maybe this needs to be on our agenda for the next few meetings.
I think so. I agree.
I kind of like to hear
Yeah.
what Parks and Rec has to say.
Absolutely.
I chime back in again.
Yeah.
I want to hear that committee's thoughts and then with their thoughts and my thoughts, we can put them together at that point. For us to chime in before they've had a good opportunity, kind of doesn't seem right to me.
But I'm saying,
Yeah, I know
You
what
know,
you're saying.
it's not one being exclusive to the other. It's just-
No, I get that. So, and I understand what you're saying. I just wanted to put the point out there that it definitely needs to go
Yeah.
there too.
Well, and I think, the idea is that until September, that's when this is ultimately going to come back to us to start making some decisions. So until September, there's going to be lots of opportunity
Absolutely.
for everybody to chime in. It's just, at this time of night today, I don't think is the optimal time for us to provide any meaningful feedback. So
Absolutely not.
I know it's not for me. So, yeah.
So process
Huh.
wise to Councillor Sample's request, I would suggest that the Parks and Rec Task Force watch this presentation. It is live streamed, it's posted. And then that's a great example because this agenda is obviously public. The whole presentation is there to familiarize yourself with what was presented so that they can have an informed discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Steve, and thanks to our staff too. I mean,
It's good.
yeah, literally a year's worth of work.
A
So,
bit, year and a
yeah,
bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's obvious, there's. All right. Thanks, Steve. All right. So just need a motion to receive the report. Counselor Sample, seconded by Counselor Ghishardi. All in favor? It's carried. All right, so the next report is from our Director of Financial Services regarding the amended DC interest rate policy. Very.
Your worship, this is part of. Just And I just saw that report on Thursday as well, so please don't ask me how we're paying for it.
That was my first question.
So this is just a little housekeeping item that we have to do because we adopted the policy back in 2020 because of a change in legislation that allowed us to charge interest on deferred development share payments. With Bill 23, they have also made changes to the legislation that defines how we can charge interest. They kind of left it open-ended first time around. This time they put more wording in their legislation, so it means that we have to amend our policy. Staff did consider rescinding the policy completely, but we decided to keep it because since 2020, we have charged on some dollar charges. So for history purposes, we wanted to keep that policy intact and not just totally pretend it never happened. So that in a nutshell is what this policy is for. As with other changes that staff are making, we are leaning away from adopting policies by bylaw. And so this would just be a chance resolution, but in order to do that, we have to pass bylaw to rescind the other bylaw.
Okay. All right. And any questions for Carrie? No? Okay. Yeah. So I mean, we're just receiving the report, passing the new bylaw to rescind the old bylaw, and then by resolution adopting the new policy. All right.
Where did that go?
Okay.
Never have a
Mover and
bylaw.
seconder. Moved by Counselor Sample, seconded by Counselor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Gary. All right, and the last item on the regular agenda is a memo from our appointments committee, I'll call it. At the last meeting, we looked at the additional members for the EDC committee. This is for library board and DEI. So that the names that are being proposed are contained there. And then there's a bylaw which formally formalizes those appointments for the three committees. Any questions on that? Did you want to speak to it, Paul, Kyle, or Walter? No.
It's fairly self-explanatory. The library board had a request.
Yeah.
Two members that put on there requested to come back on, so. With lack of advocates.
Motion to receive the report and for the bylaw to formally appoint the members suggested in the memo. You putting your hand up, it's my peripheral vision.
Nobody put your hand up, right?
All right,
God.
moved by Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All right, all in favor? Carried. All right, notices of, yeah, use your other one. Notices of motion. I know Councillor Bernardo, I think, sent one through to the clerk.
Yes. Not the best with what I gave you, but I'll try to do it. Here, the notice of motion is be it resolved by the council as staff to add what the cost of 2 cameras for speed and traffic control and safety zone and community safety zones and school zones. What the cost would be, and that this be included in the traffic calming study report that is coming to council for our consideration. So these are basically the traffic cam, radar traffic cam. They are allowed within the current community safety zones and school zones, and I'm just asking that when we're going through that traffic calming report, they be considered in there, what the cost would be, and bring that back for our consideration. I know
So-
you probably already have.
Well, we had just coincidentally, we had a meeting today. I was participating in a call with Traffic Logics, which is part of the LAS Canoe program. And the basic costs for a permanent camera is $27,000 per camera. If you want it mounted so that it's portable on a trailer, it ranges from 32 to 35, and the data is 8,000. So certainly look at that in terms of a system. And we'll be providing more information, but they're not inexpensive, but it depends on your ticketing protocols and the cost of recovery on that. And they can only go currently in community safety zones, as you referenced, until some of the motions, then another one is again on tonight's agenda, where the province is being asked to consider those being in existence in locations outside of community safety zones, so that everybody's not converting spaces to community safety zones for compliance. And then gives you more speed enforcement when you have people going 80 and 50s in many parts of your community.
And the reason I brought forward this motion tonight is because Greenwood Street, Little Park Lane, William Street are all community safety zones. They are town bypass zones.
Mhm.
I got a good feeling that those cameras will soon pay for themselves.
So you're gonna look into that further anyways. So.
Yes.
All right, so on to communications. Is there anything there? Okay, Councilor Bernardo?
I have a couple. Number 9, the town of Amherst in the town of Erie regarding the use of the traffic cameras that was mentioned, that communication. I'm wondering if we should put forward a motion of support for that as well. The other one is number 11.
Okay, let's deal with that one for, do you want to put forward that motion then?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Fegan. Any discussion? I'll just add, and I have mentioned this to Councillor Bernardo in the past. Mayor Creelman from Mono, I know is trying to get a delegation together for AMO to talk to the minister on automated speed enforcement generally, and trying to make the process a little bit easier for municipalities to actually implement. So
If he's willing to have us join him. those of us going to AMO.
Yep.
More than happy to do that.
All right, so the motion's on the floor, all in favor? It's carried.
Number 9, or number 11, sorry, the reduction of municipal insurance on Chatham Kent. That's another motion that I'd like to put forward. I think our insurance, both for our facilities as well as the town itself, have been consistently increasing year after year. I'd like to support that. as well.
We did that one. We've done that one before,
I know.
Yeah.
If we keep hammering.
but it's the same one that's circulating through, so.
And number 1, library board. I saved that one for last. Why are we getting 12 months worth of meetings all in one shot? Are they not able to give us a meeting after the proper time frame? Like, it's very hard for me to comment on something that happened, almost 6 months ago or a year ago. I can't go back and say, why did that happen? Because who the heck remembers a year ago? Well, technically, most boards report within a month to a month and a half or shortly thereafter the meeting, giving the council an opportunity to question. Here we got a whole bunch all in a row. That's not fair to us, and it's not fair, just that.
Just a comment,
Yeah, like I can chat with the board,
pass that along.
Yeah. make sure that they understand that that's difficult, and I agree. I've only been on recently, so don't blame me.
Not blaming you, it's not your fault.
Yeah, but no, I'll bring it up at the next meeting for sure, or even prior to that, I'll send an email out and just sort of give a heads up that we should be submitting these sooner.
So I can just
We certainly
to would reiterate that a timely receipt of minutes from the boards that council has representation on is important. It's about accountability and transparency. And additionally, in the absence of having a live video recording, which provides public access, those minutes become the only tool to understand the decision making.
Yeah.
So I think certainly what we can add on a policy perspective is that through the protocol of the appointments, that it's communicated through the budgetary process as well, that there's an expectation that these basic reporting requirements have to be adhered to. And then council could have the latitude or the decision to say, in the absence of that, you may look at your budgeting protocol.
All right, and number 13, the AMO update. I think Denise wanted to speak to that one.
Oh, certainly. So what happened with the defeat of Bill 5 is that AMO has now recommended, and it's summarized in here, that all municipalities make the initiative before AMO to meet with your MPP in order to reemphasize the critical need for the code of conduct for councillors as per the outline of what was done in the original private members bill. It is, it's implying that certain behaviors need to be addressed outside of the municipal act. And they're suggesting that we not have a delegation at AMO regarding this, but communicate that back so that a supplement or a replacement initiative can be done to replace what was the intent of Bill 5.
Okay. All right, anything else? Okay, I have a motion then just to receive the remaining items. Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Sample. All in favor? Carried. All right, confirming bylaw. Councillor Wagner. Seconded by Councillor Gachardi.
Let me get on it.
Sure. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Sample. All in favor? Carried.
I do all my stuff at the end.